This one has been on my to-watch list for a while. Let's hide this. Alright, let's watch this video. It's been on my to-watch list for a while.
Final Fantasy Discourse is in a really dumb spot right now due to some intentionally bad actors making it even dumber than normal. That is
Intentionally bad actors, I guess. A lot of the people are mainly just confused, though.
isn't to say it isn't valid if you aren't enjoying yourself right now, but there's a level of hyperbole and nostalgia that is muddying things, whether people want to admit it or not. Criticism is always an art form, and not all art is well made.
I feel like Wesker reads a lot of Dog Kafka. Just my feeling, honestly.
It's all valid on some level, but a lot can be less healthy or less well put together. It gets even worse when outreach merchants are making bad art. One of my
The fuck is an outreach merchant?
main criticisms with the game is the community and their lack of properly being able to constructively criticize or have any nuance.
I mean, criticism in general is very subjective. You can't always just go for constructive. Just say your criticism is not constructive just because they're criticizing in some personal way. Honestly, constructive criticism to everyone is going to be different, though I do understand which it is you're talking about.
Even without outrage,
Just saying, like, when you're talking specifically about a fucking video game, the criticism is always going to be very subjective. It's not always going to be, like, constructive in your own way.
merchants trying to profit.
What are these fucking merchants?
Job being weaker is
Oh, profit. I get it. It's because some people are actually getting paid for the drama.
automatically a job being complete garbage and calls for Yoshi P to be called the worst director ever. Then when the people who actually took time to properly voice their complaints and are heard, people get angry because those people actually made real effort instead of screaming into the void. Of course, that doesn't apply to everyone. There are plenty of people who have genuine complaints and real reasons and do want to have real conversations about it. But even some of those people I feel like either don't have the hindsight that kind of shows Endwalker isn't nearly as bad as the worst expansion, or literally forgot.
Huh? Well, he means it's like, you say hindsight, but it's like, I'm guessing in a way you are taking a jab at a lot of people who are less experienced with the game itself, or people who are not as connected with the game as you could probably be. I kind of get that point, but on the other hand, it's like, how would I put it? I remember a comedian put it very nicely. It's like, I don't know how to drive a helicopter, but if I see a helicopter stuck in a tree, I know the pilot fucked up.
It's almost at the level I could call them liars and move on without feeling like I was being unfair.
Really? Is it that bad? Liars.
Anyone who has spent enough time around me knows I'm not entirely afraid to share my opinions. So you would think that if Endwalker was that bad, I would have no problems joining in to say Endwalker is the worst expansion. But I don't have that criticism. At worst, Endwalker is, as the kids would say, just mid. The
Kids need to say better things.
content we get is fun, jobs are generally balanced, and many other points that are positives for the game. The complaints, meanwhile, tend to be extremely fringe and don't apply to 90% of the player base. But what if...
You know what I realized? The main issue with Endwalker, not everything, not anything that people are complaining, which is something that has been pointed out to me, is that we get less frequent updates, and we have this like big period of time before our dawn trail when there's going to be nothing happening. There's just too much free time between patches. Anything else, patching, balancing, etc., is just kind of getting hit by strays. Yeah, there are some people that don't like the 2-minute meta, but they're like, at the end of the day, no one's going to be screaming about it next expansion. Like, no, 2 meta is still here. No. I don't know. I feel like it's just the moment that the biggest criticism that people can give is that there's too much free time, but they don't want to be. But however you're going to voice out that opinion, it's just going to sound like you're a very, very needy brat.
If Endwalker was so bad that they removed half the content during it, balance was seen as non-existent, with some jobs being called outright unviable, and raiding didn't just have one fight that had 1 to 2% too much HP, but was instead gated by several weeks of gear and nearly killed raiding entirely. People would have a field day. You think the discourse is bad now? Imagine if that was Endwalker.
It's like listening to... I don't know. I know that... I know like the general premise of this video, and I know where he's going with this, but it's like I feel like there's like an easier way to say like you guys don't really understand what the fuck you're talking about, other than just immediately like comparing, you know, telling us war stories. Like in my days, you had to fist fight a bear to send a Mughal mail.
So let's talk about that a little bit and maybe give people some missing and forgotten perspective.
He says a little bit. This video is almost 50 minutes long.
Let's talk about the critically acclaimed MMORPG Final Fantasy XIV with an expanded free trial, which you can play through the entirety of A Realm Reborn, and the award-winning worst expansion Heavensward, up to level 60 for free with no restrictions on playtime.
Was Heavensward award-winning? I never realized that. It's like they do say that in the spam macro, but I've never actually never actually checked what awards did Heavensward get.
And as a warning, there will be some massive spoilers for the game. Unfortunately, some topics require me to be spoilery. Yeah, that's right. The worst expansion in Final Fantasy XIV is Heavensward. So many people have joined this game hearing the meme and...
To be fair, it's subjective. Even people who have played since ARR have been telling me that they did mention something about Heavensward being bad, but they do keep claiming that Stormblood was the worst one. I don't know why. I have not played during either of those. Well, I played a bit during Stormblood, but I haven't exclusively or like intensely played either of those expansions to know properly why the fuck do either groups hate these expansions. But I don't know. The most worst expansion, I guess. Whatever.
And so much praise for the expansion, but anyone who was there knows it was far from the beacon of purity it is now. At best, it is second worst next to the base game. For as I've heard, earlier Realm Reborn had 100 to 200 milliseconds of built-in lag, Warrior literally was unplayable in raiding to start, and many other issues. This isn't a video made to specifically be a takedown of Heavensward.
I guess this is like the early days of Final Fantasy. This was like the first expansion, and they were still trying to kind of copy some things specifically from World of Warcraft and make some systems very... Well, not World of Warcraft, but like World of Warcraft like vanilla, where they had a lot of like too many complicated things that didn't really matter, including, you know, getting skills from leveling multiple jobs.
Though in a way it is, because despite being part of that oh-so-famous meme, people remember Heavensward for something it wasn't. I'm not here to tell you you're wrong for liking the expansion, but when it comes to what the game has done wrong...
To be fair, everyone kind of remembers mainly the story. This is what I mean, like the whole 2-minute thing, it's like unbalancing. No one's gonna fucking remember. Sure, some people are gonna remember Chitin. Oh, in my days we had Chitin, we had more, you know, resource management, you know, shit like that. Some individuals that are gonna tell, like, you know, horror stories around the fire. But it's like the balancing thing, no one's gonna be really remembering. They're gonna be telling stories, but most of the people will not really care. They will tell that it had a really cool story. The story was definitely cool. I doubt anyone even playing during those times thought like, you know what, story's mid. I don't know. Could be just mid though.
Huge swaths of it are being ignored for the high highs, or even what Heavensward is as of today, rather than what it was when it came out. This will be some needed context
was my
many
point.
people who did not get to experience this. Heavensward was officially released on June 23rd, 2015. People were impressed with the storytelling and fondly remember it to this day. But when people say Heavensward is as good as it is, I think this is all they remember, because almost immediately the expansion was plagued with troubles and criticisms. Starting off, you know how we have a
To be fair, that's every expansion. Let's be honest, in World of Warcraft and in Final Fantasy, every expansion starts and we have a lot of issues. A lot of criticisms. Like Endwalker had the whole issue with servers at the very start, for good reasons obviously, but it's like, it's still like, as a consumer you don't want to be, you know, in queue the entire day. Same with balancing. It's like where fucking paladins had to perform. Like 120% more just to compete with the other tanks. There was multiple balancing issues. Reaper was really cool, but it was very underperforming in the Savage tier compared to the others. There was a lot of things. I mean, balancing reasons. It's like physical range are still, not happy. So again, if this is going to be like a war story, just talking about how bad the balancing was, it's like no, nobody really cares. Because in the end, I'm pretty sure it improved by the end of the expansion, and these days we don't really care about what was. There's a reason people kind of shit on Lynx, because Lynx remembered either the worst parts, or he was not there to actually confirm how people treated those specific functions.
Patch cycle of 4 months now, due to the game being so big and all now. Well, back when the expansion launched, we got a taste of this. Yoshi P did the most evil thing in the world. He's so terrible a person. You should all unsub right now because he sucks so bad. He gave the dev team a vacation.
This at least like in good news, like the community, community of the year or whatever the fuck, the community barely changed, because these days you will be playing with a fucking rock on stream and you'll still get people fucking bitching that you're doing and liking shit wrong. So people are always gonna be complaining, especially over the most menial and stupid shit. Oh well.
Yeah, really. People got angry about it. It might have been just a very small minority, but at the time there was a noticeable reaction to this dastardly, evil plot to not overwork the dev team. The raid tier was delayed, I believe, and later patch 3.1 ended up releasing November 10th the same year, so it's not even a significant delay. So yeah, not really a mark against Heavensward, just people being dumb that kinda soured the mood at the time. If community or people is a complaint anyone has and genuinely puts it against Endwalker, well, you better put way more against Heavensward. My god. We could talk about balance and opinions on that, but ultimately things shifted to a very rigid meta of Dragoon, Ninja, Bard, and Machinist.
Yeah, so that definitely proves at least my theory that it was very based with World of Warcraft, and they had flavors of the month. I'm glad they at least improved. It's like, if the balancing was that bad in Heavensward, I'm glad it improved, that we are... Like, the DPS is so much more balanced these days. Well, except for, like, Fizz range again. But, like, everything else is, like, way more balanced for what it is. And, the whole... the whole 5% having specific good jobs in the group, kind of specifically... Like, creating that meta has created additional, like, forms of balance. So, like, if certain jobs don't bring as much damage as another job, they're still brought in for the extra percent for everyone else. And in the end, balance is created by them just being in the group. So it depends, I guess.
It wasn't even close. What with Trick Attack being at its most loved, and Dragoons giving a passive damage boost to both the Bard and the Machinist, was a disembowel. It used to increase all piercing damage on a target, which means the ranged jobs got to benefit. By this point, the opinions on Astrologian came around as well.
That's true. Piercing and bludgeoning damage was a thing. Is it still a thing? I feel like it's just physical, magical, and darkness damage now.
Seen as weak at launch from everyone I talked to, it got so many different adjustments every patch, more than any of the other jobs. Well, aside from maybe Bard. Some people greatly miss Bowmage, many others despised it, myself included. It wasn't even like it was a job rework. 1 to 50 played the same as it did before Heavensward. It's just you had to Bowmage in Heavensward. Quick tangent, people complain about jobs losing their identity in
Quick tangent?
Endwalker, but nothing compares to a Realm Reborn Bard into Heavensward Bard. The playstyle shift is about as extreme as Old Summoner to Endwalker Summoner, but again...
I genuinely wish he would show at least more, like, if he had any footage or example footage from specifically that time. At the moment, I'm seeing a lot of footage specifically from current content. Either dungeons, roulettes, or I don't know. It's like, I feel like this would prove a bigger point if he would at least, like, show some of the things other than just, Reddit post titles.
And that's without the full rework that gives Summoner a consistent identity from 1 to 90. Summoner is a physical ranged. Even people who like Bowmage call it Bow Mage. And when there's 5 fewer jobs to play as, your options for begrudgingly changing your main were fewer. And Machinist was a gun mage. That one is fine because it's a brand new job, but come on. Anyway, back to the balance.
I'm very confused. Was the issue that people didn't like, or there was like some weird balancing with the Bard and Machinist? I guess the mage part is that they had something to cast, but I don't know. I feel like that was like a very necessary rant.
Let's talk. Casual groups still really never needed to care about balance, but they did. Even in Stormblood, when balance had been improved, Samurai was often excluded from even extreme level content. Combine this with the same player base that invented skip sort or disband, and you get a recipe for the meta being mirrored even where it isn't needed. Which it wasn't even needed in Alexander Creator Savage either. That was mostly for speedruns, but I even saw groups forcing the meta for anima weapon farms.
I'm kind of glad that the game is actually, like, listening more to this, I'm kind of a bit more happy with the balancing we have right now. Because these days, we literally everyone talks about that there's no really meta, that you can play whatever you want and you will still do well. Like, listening to this, what was, 3 expansions ago, it's like, it makes me happy. The game has good balance then.
While we had some true imbalances and problems, perceived imbalances made things worse.
Hold on, are we full party yet? No, we're not. Oh. Let me send it again. Oh, back to video.
And worse. Look back at the intro for this video. This is what I mean with weaker being perceived as trash. While much of the discussion is a community issue, it stems from genuine problems the balance of the game had. For as intense as the conversations around balance are now, it was worse back then, plaguing even the casual scene more than it does today. Rather than taking word as gospel, take it with a grain of salt. When Xeno goes on a rant about tanks, hi Xeno, you might have been told to react to this because it's in vogue right now, and I get it, gotta pay the bills. Don't just blindly believe him, even when he's right. A tiny bit of skepticism will go a long way to getting you to understand the criticism way more.
That is true, actually. A lot of people, like, will take, someone's word of mouth more to heart than, someone who has more experience. For example, I had someone in one of my groups who genuinely believed that you have to be inside sacred soil when it was cast, otherwise you do not get the buff. So basically you would miss out on it, when all you had to do was just enter and get a server tick and you will get the buff. A lot of people, but he would start telling people that, and people would actually take that to heart, and I would have to have this conversation with multiple people after that. Nope, that's not the case. So a lot of people will have some weird theories and then specifically defend them and spread them. So this is a very good point that people genuinely need to start doing fucking research. Just Google, just talk to people who are a bit more, more experienced than all of us. There's plenty of them, and they will all offer help. There's like many like Discords and like sources of information where you can just ask these questions.
Get you involved in the conversation, and perhaps even actually be able to give constructive and actionable criticism too, rather than aimless anger and no way for them to fix it, because they don't know what fixing it means to you. Again, this isn't also to say
also a really good point, yeah. It's anyone who has made the, the funny drama videos, no solutions and no fixes.
everyone is blinding agreeing with him as such, but I've been seeing it happen over and over since I joined the game. Hell, I can guarantee I was part of it. But I took time to learn the game, learn myself, and actually be able to agree with things on an honest level instead of mindless parroting. I often disagree. Hell, this entire video is almost a takedown of Heavensward as an expansion just to prove a point.
Is that what this video is going to be? Am I going to be listening to 40 more minutes of just him shitting on Heavensward?
And there's going to be dozens of comments who never make it past me calling it the worst. But I can absolutely say I'm much more learned and informed than I was back in the day, which I could probably end the video there with showcasing my point. Actually put effort into your criticism. Don't just parrot what a guy said without understanding what he said. But the part of the point was also how short-sighted people are. They forget their history and see the forest for the trees. Speaking of job balance,
I'm sorry, it was just funny to see it in the background. Hold on, let me watch this again. It was funny.
what he said.
I love this mechanic.
But the part of the point was also how short-sighted
Landscape is
people
such
are.
a funny
They
line
forget
straight.
their history and see the forest for the trees. Speaking of job balance, stat balance. Do you remember what direct hit was? How it
Stat
didn't
balance?
exist back in Heaven's Word? Did you even know direct hit wasn't always there? Do you
Yeah.
remember the numbers, Mason? Because direct hit used to
Mason?
be accuracy, a stat I don't know anyone really misses. If you missed it, please do tell me why, because in practice it was no better to me. Accuracy does what you expect, increases your accuracy up to a 100% guaranteed hit. Front, flank, rear, and casters all with different thresholds. Casters would stop at the caster cap, while everyone else would need to stack upwards of 700 accuracy to be able to hit stuff in the Savage tier's final.
This kind of confirms my theory that a lot of the stuff Final Fantasy XIV picked up from World of Warcraft did kind of either make it into the game, but was tried and tested and then just got rid of. Because in World of Warcraft, you also have, well, we used to have accuracy as well, especially in Warlords of Draenor, I believe. You also had multi-strike stat. But you also had a chance for your attack to get parried, especially from the front and the sides. That's why normally it was like that was the reason World of Warcraft tanks would turn the boss away, not just because of cleaves, but also because of parry chances. I guess the whole meta did begin with that in Final Fantasy XIV. Mind you, this is just a theory. But I guess they did add. At what point did they add positionals? I wonder. Was it there from the beginning? I wonder if he talks about it.
Final fight. It was
I'm
kind of
curious.
just something you had to do, purely an obligation. Arguably, direct hit is a more boring stat, just a further option for doing more damage. It also increased the level of RNG for parsing at the very high end, but like, come on, that's just nitpicking at that point.
To be fair, that didn't really change today as well. And I genuinely wish they did something with the stats. Specifically made, like, I'm gonna keep preaching about this. I wish tenacity and piety affected specific skills for tanks and healers, and maybe another stat for DPS. Like, affect their skills directly. So no one would just constantly go for, max crit and direct hit rate, or, crit determination, or, spell speed determination.
But is it
The
really
usual
all that any
trifecta.
better to have a stat you pretend doesn't exist past the required minimum, where the game has no in-game way to see what amount you needed? People needed to put on the gear and just test. Luckily, Stone Sky Sea started this expansion so they could use the striking dummies, but it needed to be tested manually, and this would be needed for every new tier if they kept the system, because while something like crafting numbers have been pretty consistent with being able to assume breakpoints beforehand, there's no way to know for sure until it has been tested.
Stone Sky and Sea is like the worst for fucking healers. Like, you can only test out your damage in so many ways. They really need to add more functions to those fucking training dummies. Like, give us something to heal mid that rotation.
And with how most everyone just grabs one of the agreed best-in-slot gear sets, being able to see multiple types of crits is probably more fun to everyone, huh? Number go up is enjoyable. But that's less specific than something like Black Mage and the racial bonuses. Back in Heavensward, stat numbers were so much lower, so 1 or 2 extra stats in something did mean way more than it does now. On top of this, Piety was actually a max MP boost. We didn't have.
To be fair, they can still kind of make a small change, but it's mainly for tanks, and it's mainly if you go like Hrothgar or Rogadin. Like, the extra vitality is gonna give you like extra 300 health. Mind you, we have literally just thousands upon thousands, like 100,000s of health. So those 300 are barely anything. But that's like the only advantage to racial passives these days. That's it.
Have 10,000 flat MP at all times. Skill cost also scaled with your level. So if Fire took about 10% MP at level 50, it would still take about that at level 60 due to how much it was set to cost at both levels. So stacking Piety could theoretically give you extra casts of Fire or such. If you were a Lalafell Black Mage, you didn't have to worry. You had that racial stat bonus to keep you going. Everyone who didn't have the Piety threshold needed to meld a Piety materia, or play a bit differently. The common rotation at the time only worked at that specific MP level, meaning those very few racial stats would lose you a Fire 4, or put you into a position where you didn't have enough MP to cast Blizzard 3 to start the Umbral phase.
Again, I'm pretty sure they picked it up from World of Warcraft, the racial buffs. Like, the more I'm listening to this, the more I'm realizing how many more things have been picked up specifically from either World of Warcraft or a few other MMOs. I'm not gonna say that they exclusively took shit out of World of Warcraft. There's plenty of other MMOs that do similar things. But I'm glad they also kind of worked against those particular bits and actually worked on fixing them. Because in World of Warcraft, God forbid, you have the wrong fucking racial passive. You're not
I don't
entering
recall
a
this being an
hardcore
issue for
group.
level 50 content, so it even is an issue exclusive to Heavensward Black Mage. Though, correct me if I'm wrong and misremembering. That's not even the worst of it. There was the constant discourse around tanks and their stats. There have been shifts to what stat tanks use for DPS multiple times over the years. At this point, I believe tanks were completely based on the strength stat. So what would you do if your tank had a significantly lower HP amount because they were wearing Dragoon rings? Nothing, because that was pretty normal. There's a reason why rings that have the same amount of strength and Vit are locked specifically to a roll now, even if there's no tenacity attached. Even Stormblood had its own issues with this until we finally got the roll-locked rings and removal of main stat materia. Along the same trend is why we have 2 meld slots on rings, something that was extremely common and complained about one way or the other. Because your warrior missing a lot of HP for a raid tier already seen as killing the game.
Hold on, people complain about having two. Hold on, did I misread him? Did he say like people complained specifically about having 2 materia slots?
Meld slots on rings. Even Stormblood had its own issues with this until we finally got the roll-locked rings and removal of main stat materia. Along the same trend is why we have 2 meld slots on rings, something that was extremely common and complained about one way or the other. Because your warrior missing a lot of HP for a raid tier already seen as killing the game was just too much. Oh yeah, you remember that? Alexander Gordius was often considered the death of raiding, and could even potentially be traced back to with how people say Ether is the only raiding data center. Complex and hard with the new and different rotations, a trash fight that I don't think anyone liked. I was the Gobwalker guy. A final fight most people never saw and was cheesed through, and the most infamous jiggly of them all.
What was the
People
cheese?
were
I
upset
wonder.
that P8S was 1 to 2% overtuned. Gordius
Oh right, the cheese was literally making someone. You would sack someone for the lasers. I think I saw a video about it when I was helping out a group recently with their like early A4S prog.
needed weeks of gearing for most groups, with mechanics that were often seen as extremely finicky and bad. Digititis? More like pingitis.
What?
Tethers? More like bathers. Even when you don't factor in those
fuck is
things,
talking
the fight was just really hard. Tight DPS check, tight execution, tight healing, it was all just hugely punishing. It's also stuff like this that make me say people were way worse players back in the day. The groups that could clear were already god gamers to we plebeians, but I'm very curious to how things would go if we got an A3S Unreal of sorts, or even just a fight people would compare to A3S. A lot of the doomsaying at the time involved people being worried that the game was going to die as a result of this.
So basically, similar to what we're having right now, a lot of people are just saying this stuff bad, it's gonna kill game. Wah.
The complete collapse of rating is not good for any game,
That
even one
is
with
true, though.
minimal rating to begin with. Obviously, the game has recovered quite spectacularly, but has anyone genuinely said that rating is dead because of what happened in Pandemonium? I'm sure it didn't help that at the time, a wipe meant waiting up to 7 minutes for the next pull.
I mean, it didn't kill the rating scene, but it made a lot of people very, very angry. Specifically, like the damage balancing in Abyssos.
Cooldowns didn't reset on wipe. If you wiped right after the paladin used Huddled Ground, you were waiting for that to come back, or at least to be available when it would be needed.
Yeah, that was
Then
a
you
bit-
have to wait 54
that's kinda
seconds for the
shit.
Warrior's countdown macro. Oh, did you not know about the 54-second long pre-pull opener for Warrior?
I mean, Warriors got a 30-second pull timer right now, so barely anything changed. I mean, it's a specific timing pull timer for them, but god damn, like when I realized that Warriors have some secret fucking 30-second pull timer for certain fights, for like some very weird magical opener. Yeah, that part hasn't really changed. It's just been adjusted that you can do it without it.
It was grueling and pointless, but that's a common theme for Heavensward. Crafting and gathering was the hardest to get into, even more difficult than it is with 90 levels to go through. While currently people suggest leveling every crafter for the shared materials, back then it was absolutely required to level every crafter. Today you can theoretically just be one crafting class, just buy the materials from the other crafters. Back then, if you didn't level every crafter, you were just outright a bad crafter. This is because of cross-classing. Every crafter had some skills to give to the others.
So crafters also had cross-classing. Yeah, and that is definitely a very bad idea, because I played Final Fantasy XIV like many years ago. Hard to say when. I might have been actually mid to Heavensward, if they still had cross-classing then. And I remember I wanted to play Ninja, but I had to level up multiple jobs for it. So I kind of quit as soon as I got my fat chocobo.
And so many of them obligatory. Every touch and synthesis action had a success rate, so you would need Steady Hand to boost it to 100%. Careful Synthesis was a cross-class. Tricks of the Trade, Manipulation, Beauregard's Blessing, Inner Quiet, all main tools you use for crafting were all cross-class skills. Then the actual progression in crafting was a chore too. The class quests of Heavensward required you to have master books to be able to complete them.
I feel like this entire video is just gonna be just talking about how bad, it was during his time. Chat, does anyone know if this video is just literally gonna be about complaining about Heavensward? Because at this point, it's like he's only 15 minutes in, and this is a 50-minute video. I'm kind of like, I get it. It was harder during Heavensward, but it's like, did he really make a 50-minute video just to tell the other guy that, just to prove that the other guy doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about?
Getting scripts, newly introduced, was difficult because of needing a baseline of gear, which you wouldn't really be.
Okay, we're doing this again, I guess.
Able to do fresh at 60 unless you were already established as a crafter, or had funds to buy decent gear. Then there's the crafts themselves and rotations used. Materials with a high level of difficulty to obtain or a large number needed. If I say the word camphor, I'll give many crafters a PTSD flashback. Then the rotation most commonly used, as far as I had seen, was Maker's Mark, or Mama. What the Mama rotation did at endgame in Heavensward was give you, say, 40 stats.
I barely know anything about crafting. Can we skip this part?
The gathering side was equally contentious.
Gathering, fucks. I barely know about either of those jobs. I got all gatherers and crafters max level. I got some gear, but I have no fucking idea what half, like, not even half, but like most of the skills do. This is definitely not for me. I'm not gonna get a frame of reference from this.
As much as you, this will leap into easier, but now far easier. People want
Sir,
things
please.
New, old new. This too was a Heavensward thing, and it was hated and failed twice in Heavensward. The first 2 times that I never saw anyone talk about. But what was the loot these enemies dropped? Ethereal gear. What is ethereal gear? Well,
again, this is crafting, so I'm guessing this is. Wait, hold on. Is he talking about diadem?
I have never cleared the emergency mission because you had a significant chance.
Yeah, I know about the emergency mission and diadem. Yeah, he's talking about diadem. The diadem that died twice before we got it in Shadowbringers. Let's just skip this, please. I don't mean to be mean to the guy. I'm sure he prepared like this video specifically, but like, I just like the 10-minute. Wait, how long? About 6 minutes of him talking about gathering and crafting would go just over my head. I literally have no opinion on that because I have no frame of reference. I don't do anything.
Item maps, I believe, are now just completely gone. The current version is definitely the best received, but Heavensward had to fail twice to get that far. Speaking of maps being poorly received, the areas of Heavensward, people constantly call Azizla the worst map in the game. If it's not there, it's the Sea of Clouds. The Locks is a distant third.
I mean, they're both kind of shit, to be fair.
The other maps often aren't seen too positively either. Kurth's Western Highlands isn't too positive. Ishgard itself confuses people. The tower in the Foylands confuses people too. Trading Mists is Mughals, and Hinterlands, it's just Azizla again.
I do agree on this actually, because I did hunt down some either S ranks or I did go into these areas specifically for blue mage quests. Well, not quests, but specifically spells. Some fates. What else did I do here? I remember coming here fairly frequently, and I remember that it is a pain. Like, look at that map over there. There's there's literally like no aetheryte anywhere. You gotta come here. And if you, God forbid, you don't have the flying here, you're gonna hate this area. Same with Dravenia. There's like just 3 aetherytes, and they're all in the most weirdest area, like very close to each other. And there's like a big chunk of area that's just like available to you for no reason, but you gotta walk there.
They're large and have poor aetherite placement. People also hated the ether current placements. The worst one is always called that super easy one to get in the locks. The amount of complaints about these maps.
I hated the one in Corythus. You had to actually progress. Like, before I realized you had to do some quests to get to that particular area to get the aetherite current in Corythus West. One of the Corythus ones. The one that right after Ishgard. I had to do quests just to unlock it. It was like the only one I couldn't get to.
They just keep coming anytime a newbie goes through them, and then the vets chime in about hating them too. Or, you know, forgotten like Churning Mists. People forget this place so often. Even I do. They also forget Lord of Verminion exists. You know,
Not true. I adore Lord of Verminion. I don't actively play it, but I come here time to time when you got the tournament for that, the MGP. I do like to compete. And honestly, I wish they would expand more on Lord of Verminion, or at least let us kind of play it outside of Golden Saucer, like against other players. But yeah, to be fair, I do like Lord of Verminion.
Lord of Verminion. That like RTS game in the Golden Saucer? Lord of Verminion? No? Well, I don't blame you. But that was Heavensward too.
No.
I don't know where to put this point that would fit naturally, but the Void Arc. I don't know about you, but anytime I did Void Arc, people would spend the duty saying how much they hated it. Maybe one person might say they thought it was fine or liked it, but they were then quickly drowned out by everyone getting right back to dunking on it. Something I have seen no other raid go through. Crystal Tower is...
I did hear a lot of bitching about Void Arc, specifically from quote-unquote veterans, specifically during the relic grind in Shadowbringers. You would also get them in specifically in Alliance Raid chat. Like, people would just start bitching and like patting each other on the back. Yeah, I also remember how shit Void Arc was. Meanwhile, the rest of us are just kind of like confused, like, what the fuck are these guys talking about?
only attack as much as it is because of fatigue. Void Arc, people didn't like it from day one, and is my undisputed least favorite Alliance raid. And now, let's talk about the story. When A Realm Reborn ended, people were extremely excited to see where the story would go.
Wait, is he really gonna tell us that the story was shit? I refuse to believe that. Like, compared to Stormblood, and I mean, to be fair, this came from Realm Reborn, after Realm Reborn, sorry. I mean, let's see what he has to say, honestly.
Nanamo was dead. Raubon just committed cold-blooded murder against one of the Monetarists, and the Scions wanted for regicide. Even for as much as the common man would believe in the Scions after what they did, the odds were against us. And then that plot point became a massive disappointment for most people. Nanamo was not dead. Lolorito, not out of the kindness of his own heart, if he even has one, saved her life. Raubon was freed moments before this realization. The Scions all disappearing, Y'shtola gets plucked from the life stream with permanent loss of eyesight. She now has to see by sensing the ether in the world around her. It's implied that this is slowly draining her life force, and is another plot point that gets dropped. Though technically that's not Heavensward's fault, but like, was it just meant to be Matoya warning her not to overwork herself? Why did it sound like Y'shtola is literally dying by the second, more than we all are naturally?
I genuinely hope that the reason we are going to Dawn Trail, you know, like everyone, like they did talk about, like everyone having their own little goals, why they're going there, you know, possibly having, you know, our Avengers Civil War mark there. But I genuinely hope Y'shtola is looking for a cure. That's her like whole motivation. Because otherwise, I'm very confused about... Well, not confused. I'm bummed out that we lost a lot of, like, specifically character development. Well, not character development. We get some development, but we get, like, specifically story development for a lot of these characters. We did touch down a lot on, the levelers and Endwalker. But, like, Y'shtola, I mean, Urianger as well. But Urianger just had to meet the parents of the girlfriend. Everyone else is just kind of mid. I wish we could expand specifically on their like character stories, you know, push them a bit. Because like in Shadowbringers, they were gone. They were gone. Their souls went. You know, Grachutia literally gotcha their souls into another fucking, dimension and time and planet. And in Endwalker, business as usual. Only the levelers kind of got some character development. I guess Urianji too, when he started hanging out with the rabbits. But Urianji was due for character development for fucking ages, because his vocabulary was his personality.
Thancred just gets spat out somewhere in Travania. He did lose his ability to manipulate ether, which Shadowbringers goes really far into making a really awesome part of his character, so thanks for that, Heavensward. Minfilia is in limbo, but with
I mean, who gives a fuck if he lost, like, his ability to manipulate Aether? I feel like Thancred was fine without it. He was a rogue to begin with.
Eidolon herself. Like, she's so excited right before she's taken. If anything, this is a good outcome for her, even if, Thancred dies a couple...
To be fair, I don't know why I'm starting... Ooh. Sorry about that. I don't know why I'm starting this sentence with "to be fair," but I honestly, like, barely remember what the fuck happened to Minfilia. Like, I cared so little about her story that I genuinely just, like, I'm trying to remember, but I'm just blanking out. What the fuck happened to her? Why did she die? Where did she go?
Couple dozen times inside before this gets fully resolved. Ida and Papalimo? Yeah, they just went somewhere over there, just sitting around with the Alamegans over there.
To be fair, I like them.
There.
Well, before, one of them died and one of them turned out to be not the person she is, and turns out she's actually, the sister.
So, some permanent scars, but everyone is technically alive. Even Minfilia, until Reen eats her. So much of a disappointment for people.
I like the way he phrases it, until Reen eats her.
So much of a backtrack of what happened, people were convinced Papalimo was alive after he finally did die to seal Shinryu. We don't see a body, so people were convinced he does not die here.
I'm genuinely happy that they did confirm that he died in Endwalker when we did, took the path. Because, like, if they did want to bring him back, they should have brought him back in Stormblood. But it would be a bit kind of shit if they brought him back, like, 3 expansions later. That is, like, the worst fucking way to do things. There's a reason some deaths are very annoying in, like, Marvel or DC comics, because they happen, like, in 1990s, and then some character comes back in 2023.
Only now that Endwalker has fully and completely confirmed Papalimo is dead will people be forced to stop. One of the criticisms of the game as a whole is the developers being afraid to kill people off. Y'shtola being the face of the game and stuff like Dissidia probably plays a part of why her eyes are no longer something deadly.
I do agree that they definitely should start killing a lot of more characters, especially the ones that we care about. It should be, like, a much better written story. Like, there's a reason people love the Dark Knight story, because someone has to fucking perish there. But yeah, the story is getting way softer. Like, Endwalker was very soft, besides, the whole Civil War and the fall of Garlemald, and, the whole Xenos thing. But nobody really cares about Xenos. Well, a lot of people care about Xenos, but not his story, honestly. I do agree with this. They definitely should start killing more people.
It's why people were convinced Papalimo would come back, no matter how much evidence that he was dead. Nobody else dies unless they are a side character. Nanamo? I kinda give a pass. How hard must it be to write along the direction they wanted to go, with one of your 3 leaders being dead? Raubon definitely wouldn't just become the leader of the new government Nanamo wished to establish. Even when going home to Alamigo, he remains a general. He's charismatic and smart, but he knows who he is.
I mean, to be fair, like, even story-wise, I don't believe he would become the ruler. Like, Nanamo should have... Like, I get why they poisoned her and tried to kill her, but she would not be moved just because of, like, they literally wrote her into a necessity. Like, her bloodline, you know what she introduced herself. I'm Nanamo, this in the bloodline of this, when she meets Raubon in the gladiator arena. It's like, unless there's like a sudden new character that might take over, and it's like, we haven't met... Oh no, we actually just met the adopted son of Raubon. But it's like, yeah, there wasn't really a lot of options to replace her. They could have, but there wasn't a lot of options that would actually make the story good.
So, like, what would you do? How do you genuinely keep Nanamo dead? The patch content of Heavensward would entirely be taken up by this plot point. Even killing Thordan with him technically having an heir takes up significant plot time in Heavensward patch
I do hope Kana, though, retires, though, and starts hanging out with us more.
quests. Figuring out how to progress Ul'dah is too much on top of that, so you just trick the players into thinking she's dead, even if it leads to some disappointment that they didn't keep to it.
I mean, to be fair, the fact that we talk to, like, rulers of these cities is, like, kind of, mid. They call upon us when they need us, we do a small, 5-6 quest line with them, and then they call us, oh, I'm glad I trusted you here, and then they disappear, and it's like, our relationship with these rulers is kind of, I don't know, unnecessary. Not spoil. What's the word I'm looking for? Filler. Us being on first name basis with these rulers is kind of just seems like filler. Honestly, we have a lot other shit going on. Like, I did enjoy the story when we were just Science of the Seventh Dawn. We were hiding somewhere in the fucking desert in Horizon. Yeah. So it's like, and now we're like the legendary hero that everyone knows, etc., etc. It's like, I genuinely hope they get a timer start, or like something that will happen that will reset this entire progress. They did mention that they're gonna create a new place or checkpoint for new players to start from, and I hope that's part of it, because like we've developed this reputation. It's like, where the fuck do you go from here? You saved the world so many times. You've defeated gods, primals, civil war. You established, beat civil wars. You refurbished and renewed civilizations like Garlemald. You've been to the moon. You've defeated the darkness. You're on first name basis with Hyland, the gods. Well, nobody knows that she's dead. You're on the first name basis with the actual deities of the planet as well, who nobody knows that they're dead. So it's like, where are you gonna go from here? I genuinely hope we find some treasure that will literally reset the entire fucking story. Or just sends us, actually, hold on. Sends us to a new planet. Yo, that's actually a good idea. We've explored like 3 planets out of the 13. There's plenty of planets for us to explore. That might actually be the option they can go.
This was the first expansion of the fledgling MMO. It really shows. Half of all the things it tried to do ended up failing. Sure, we had successes like Deep Dungeon, but that doesn't erase all the different ways people were disappointed in the course of the expansion, and then they were told to skip or disband.
I mean, a lot of people have this weird... hello, Conjure Cow. Again, I don't have any commands or bots or anything, but hello, hi, welcome. Yeah, this is like a point I'm actually concerned with a lot of videos. A lot of people will claim this was supposed to be for this content, this was supposed to be a replacement for this content, this content was supposed to substitute or compensate for this content, etc., etc., etc. Like, I don't think Deep Dungeons was supposed to make or make everything good that was prior. A lot of people also assume like Variant and Criterion Dungeons are also kind of there to compensate for lack of, I guess, story, or I don't know. People make a lot of claims that it was meant for the casuals. It was meant that an extra way to get gear, yada yada yada. A lot of claims, not a lot of proof.
It's no wonder one of the issues the game currently has now is taking chances. When they do, people often hate it.
Exactly, this is what I mean.
Even the 2-minute burst of Endwalker could be seen as a risk they took, and that got a level of criticism too.
To be fair, it's not really a risk. They literally made a risk towards a safer side. Like, how can you go wrong with a 2-minute buff window? I mean, a similar thing is in World of Warcraft. I keep comparing the games to World of Warcraft. But you have Bloodlust and Time Warp. You do reset those cooldowns if the fight is long enough. You do repot. There are damage windows where everyone has to use specifically, their burst. They're not as, menial and basic as we have it in 14, but I promise you, our rotations are a lot more fun than the ones in World of Warcraft.
Why take risks if it's going to kill the game? Let's make one last point. Regardless of quality, because let's be real, objectively, the quality of the game remains good. Let's compare the amount of content Endwalker has next to Heavensward. First, we have dungeons. Heavensward has a big list of 18 dungeons.
I mean, who gives a fuck about dungeons? This is my genuine concern. Like, people did talk like, we got less dungeons. Who gives a fuck? Who keeps running dungeons? Who keeps going into dungeons for fun?
Endwalker only having 13.
Like, everyone is doing that shit for tombstones. Even if we got more dungeons, it would be just other dungeons that would be doing for tombstones. No one goes to hang out in dungeons.
That's 5 less when you don't count VNC dungeons. Add those in and we have 16 dungeons for Endwalker. 2 less, but consider that VNC is 2, technically 3, difficulties.
I don't think VNC was meant to compensate for lack of dungeons. VNC is just like new content. I don't think they took away from dungeon development just to make VNC. I think VNC was literally just meant as new content they wanted to bring out for like smaller groups.
A massive puzzle-based dungeon you're meant to run repeatedly for different paths, fights, and the true ending, and basically a raid. So really, even if we count Variant as just 1, despite having 5 completely unique bosses, Criterion definitely is worth counting as a second dungeon. So we have 19 dungeons. And maybe it's just me, but I tend to see people call doing roulettes as the lowest form of content. More variety in those roulettes is nice, but it's hardly more content. Raids, 12 normal and savage, and 3 alliance. Yeah, no difference, until you count Endwalker having 2 ultimate raids. 13 jobs to 19 jobs and a limited job. This one is less of a measure against each other, and more of a show of how much more Endwalker has.
19 jobs? So we're getting 21 jobs next expansion. I've been miscounting for a while then.
As due to coming so much later, Endwalker has the content of all previous expansions inside of it. Have you really done all of it? Crafting and gathering, about the same when you account for what didn't work in Heavensward and was removed.
I don't care.
You might also count that
For either
Endwalker
of these.
has 3 custom deliveries to Heavensward's 1, and the fact that Ocean
Oh, that's true. We did get ocean fishing.
gets updates. How about open field content? Despite how many people were very loud about how awful Eureka and Bosia were, those of us who liked that content were disappointed that Endwalker had none of this. Heavensward had instead the Diadem. I mean, the Diadem V2. Oh, yeah. Well, both expansions have a deep dungeon. People like deep dungeons, right?
I mean, to be fair, it's not a good point that we getting no open field, operation content. Meanwhile, Heavensward killed 2 of those. It's not really a counterpoint here, but yeah.
Palace of the Dead is double the size, but not inherently double the enjoyment. Some people prefer the longer length, others prefer 100. I don't think you can really compare the two outright. A deeper dive is needed, no pun intended. You people with nothing to do are necromancers, right? Soloed Palace of the Dead to 200? How about lifestyle content?
I feel like this is just like Petty calling out. Like, he knows who he's talking to. Like, the video is meant for like that one fucking guy who's bitching about everything. Not just links, but I mean, genuinely, like as a general term, that one guy. But like a lot of this sass is just kind of like, I feel like it's there and necessary.
Endwalker has the new Island Sanctuary, a fun little diversion, and some decorating for the housing buffs. What was Heavensward's thing? The gathering side of the Diadem. Well, trials. Both have 7 trials, unless you count Unreal. Sure, it's the same exact fight as originally, but with numbers scaled up. But it's probably the closest you can get to experiencing the trials as they...
I don't believe Unreal should count. I genuinely don't. I get it, it's content, but it's like, I don't believe Unreal should count. Not because, like, sure, it is more content for you to do, but it's just like, it's extreme trials that you have to do. It's not really new and enticing content.
They were at launch. Massive system overhauls? Heavensward added cross-world party finder. Before we had world visit, data center visit, all that, we had to form all parties in the same world. Sure, duty finder was across the whole data center, but party finder? Nope. Thank you, Heavensward.
The more I'm listening to this, the more I'm realizing how far this game has come and how far this game can still go. So it's like, I'm actually happy how Endwalker came out because of what I'm listening to here. Well, I'm not happy, but I'm happy that it has improved on a lot of these things that I keep hearing about from previous expansions, including Shadowbringers, mind you.
Endwalker, meanwhile, has the biggest PvP revamp, new toolkits for all jobs, a new mode, and they've started retooling the frontline maps. Oh, and data center travel. Well, and then, well, that's it? I guess the Alliance raid had the Proto-Ultima weapon fight. Endwalker has the Azura fight that you could fight at FanFest, though they might decide to put that into the game in Dawn Trail, in which case you can scratch that. Oh, Hildebrand. People like...
The fuck is the Azura fight? Excuse me? I'm googling this. Azura fight. I'm curious.
So this is just a video. I'm just gonna voice over this after effect because you literally can't hear anything. The convention was really loud. But anyways, this was the Gilded Area, which is the Battle Challenge trial during the Final Fantasy 2023 FanFest.
Yeah, that's true. I am actually remembering. I saw her in the trailer. One of the trailers. We definitely saw footage of this. Like, not the fight itself, but we definitely saw this character somewhere. Okay, so there is an Azura fight, but it's not really content now, is it? Because we didn't really actually get it.
Like the Heavensward parts of Hildy, right? And they like the Endwalker parts. Said Endwalker parts also include a solo duty. On that note, Heavensward had a very
Chad, he said duty.
grindy relic. Well, the only grind for Heavensward is doing the relatively short Hildebrand questline. That comparison being how long it takes next to how long relics take to do. According to many, grindy relics are bad. So Heavensward relic is bad, right? I prefer the grindy relic.
I honestly am so fucking tired of the conversation about the relics. It's like it's a preference thing. There's different types of grinds, and you still have to do the entire fucking Hildy campaign just to get to the relic. For the previous relics, you had to do certain dungeons and certain alliance raids. Like they literally had to make some dungeons, sorry, alliance raids and dungeons mandatory, not optional anymore, just for obviously for story reasons, but also because you actually had to do the relic there as well. So it's like it's the whole conversation about the relic is like I'm already sick of like this argument just because like the relic is just so fucking menial. Like who has fun in doing either of them? I get it, you enjoy the grind, but it's like there's so much other shit that you can grind. Get an alt and go into Eureka and grind that shit if you're having fun. Otherwise, it's like I don't know. This is silly. This is a very silly argument.
And as mentioned, Heavensward did add airships for 3 companies. Not really sure what this could be comparatively to Endwalker, if anything. Oh, and we have maps. Maps are cool, and Endwalker has multiple dungeons. So now that's it, right? So what the hell, I thought Endwalker has nothing to do compared to previous expansions. The other best expansion had even less to do. I'm sure you could maybe pick out a couple things here or there I missed in Heavensward, but you could also do the same for Endwalker. And I could also bring up those damn Moogles and their tribal quests being locked behind quests that aren't even marked blue.
I do agree on this, that I did have trouble finding the Namazu quests when I was trying to get there to begin with. But to be fair, I'm also kind of tired of like having some of those quests just... I don't know, I feel like the Beast Tribe quest should be way more simple.
We can also do the
Specifically the quest, not the how you do the dailies.
same for Shadowbringers. What that has is Diadem V3 and Bozia, a piece of content widely criticized. I'll say again, the lack of another Eureka-like thing was disappointing for me, but it isn't like there's nothing to do without it. It isn't like that was
I like that he's showing the Fall Guys event footage in the background while talking about
the
this.
only content in the entire game. And Diadem is hardly this complex thing. It's collectibles and basic gathering. Expert crafts are a new feature, but still is not this giant new thing. You need to grind a ton for the Pteranodon, but as far as there being content to do, it is extremely little, especially with the Ishgardian reconstruction being long gone. Even when it was active, it was extremely time sensitive. I only ever got to do like 5 of the things. Most of them happened at like 3 AM. Fates are nice to have, but it's still less than what most people might consider content. Even if there's really nothing to do in Endwalker, there was nothing to do in Shadowbringers either.
God, the feats are dead, aren't they? You can probably go there and do something, I guess. There's also quest lines in there. There's also custom deliveries, but it's like I feel like they need to introduce feats specifically to island sanctuaries. Like add some timed event that would make people go there. Add specific like quest lines that are like temporary and can only happen there like once, sometimes.
Nothing to do in Heavensward, with half the activities being actively disdained and even removed. If it is bad now, it was always bad. You just are in denial at some point. Like, one person even said, what am I gonna do? Fishing? Seriously? Have you
Yeah, go fishing. Fishing's fun. Ocean fishing, man.
not heard about Here to Fish and Mahjong? The person who is here to fish and Mahjong? But like, I don't want to be all negative, because pointing out the positives is a major part of what makes something good criticism.
You got 10 minutes left to point out some positive, my guy.
At least when they do exist. I can hands down, no question, say without any doubt that I find Heavensward is the worst Final Fantasy XIV has ever been. But then why can I also say at the same time that Heavensward has my absolute favorite pieces of content in the entire game? My favorite trials, my favorite dungeon, my favorite alliance raid. Yes, in the same expansion as my least favorite raid of Void Ark is my most favorite raid in Dunscaith. Heavensward is so praised because of its
Now that explains why we saw so much Dunscape footage.
extremely high highs, often making people forget the extremely low lows. But it would be unfair if I didn't also talk about those high highs. I'm working on a dedicated video for this part, but I need to mention it here.
Can we talk about how cool that transition was? I just want to gush over it.
Because
It
of its
looked cool.
extremely high highs, often making people forget the extremely low lows. But it would be unfair if I didn't also talk about those high highs. I am working on a dedicated
Bam.
video for this part.
That
but
was
I need to
really
mention it here. With the release of 3.1, we got the release of The Minstrel's Ballad, Thoradin's Reign, a fight where you truly feel at a disadvantage, fighting the entire Heaven's Ward, where even your party of 8 is the smaller force. And it's just amazing, and by far the single best trial the game has ever had. When I am disappointed by a trial, it's in comparison to Thordan, and then probably Ravana in second. There is a high that fight gives me that nothing else has.
To be fair, I kind of agree. Like, and until Unreal, I kind of treated Thordan fight as a joke. It was just too long. There was just too, even when you were trying to get the pigeon mounts. But like after doing the Unreal Thordan, it's like honestly, I am appreciating this fight way more, a lot more. Maybe because I'm a big fanboy of DSR as well. But it's like I'm appreciating this fight way more for what it is and what it requires of players.
Even Dragon Song Reprise Ultimate. Yes, even Death of the Heavens in Drew doesn't give me the same feeling as doing Thordan Extreme does. And I like Drew. I never cleared, unfortunately, but I want to remedy that.
Did he say Drew? What is that? What? Why Drew? I mean, I guess if you're selling carries, you can call them Drew Carry.
Since I was at Wroth Flames, but even an Ultimate doesn't replicate the feelings I have and still have for that fight. Again, I'm cutting it short because I will have a whole video just for that, but Heaven's Ward gave me a fight that I don't think will ever be beaten.
Is he going to be talking about Drew or about specifically Thordan? I mean, in both cases, I want to watch that now.
In my eyes. It gave me the best Alliance raid too. Unscathed is a fair level of difficulty, I'd say. It has a good variety in its mechanics, and Diabolos is such an amazing final boss.
Jesus Christ,
as absolutely terrifying Phase 2 is,
this healer is the one shot.
Inevitably destroys the Alliance. People freak out so hard when they see they're doing 0 damage for so long, because its stone skin is so beefy. The whole duty is just such a fun time, so varied, and definitely is what all other Alliance raids get compared to for me. Then the dungeon that is the Fractal Continuum. 3 very different bosses that all were fun to fight, actually fun trash pulls, and just such a fun time in general. Though this
I do agree that I want to do a Ravana Unreal. Because like when I started raiding and when our small little FC was trying to gather a raiding group, we couldn't gather 8 people yet. We had 6. So we tried to unsync and... we level synced to some of the older extremes, and Ravana was one of them. Bismarck, Ravana, and we did those fights. They were really fun. I really hope we get Ravana Unreal at some point.
This was also the patch that had Never Reap, the worst dungeon in the entire game. So maybe a little bit of bias due to that, but I do still love Fractal for itself. It is super fun. And then for what the story did with disappointing me, it gave me one of my absolutely favorite moments in the entire game. This entire scene with the late Stephen Critchlow is just pure perfection on the tone and delivery.
Even as the Scions celebrated the return of a long-lost friend, honorable men plotted to deprive them of another.
I like this scene.
Honorable men.
The writing was very brave.
Hero, but a scheming patricide.
Aw.
Honorable men who would fain wash the paving stones of Foundation with a tyrant's blood. Honorable men whose knife in the dark was the spark which set the city aflame, and who sang as it burned.
It gives me chills every time. This is the cutscene from the quest Dreams of the Lost, if you wish to rewatch it for yourself. It's just so damn good. And of course there's the Warriors of Darkness being introduced, everything through Baelsar's Wall, and of course Haurchefant. There are some absolutely amazing moments in this expansion story, including more subdued ones like the relationship between Istinian and Alphinaud. For all the moments that went sour, moments like this are why we love this game.
You know, the more he talks about the story, I am remembering why I like the story of Heaven's Sword, but I'm drawing a blank. I kind of don't remember what he didn't like about the story. I remember him mentioning something bad about the story. I think it was just You Stole His Eyes and the continuation from Realm Reborn, but it's like... I'm drawing a blank now. What the fuck did he say about the story? Fuck. Oh well.
Why we keep coming back. They make us care, and then rip out our hearts for both good and ill. Then at the end of the ride that is the story, we can do some dungeons, raids, and trials. And Endwalker had lots of these too. It had some very huge highs. In From the Cold made me feel genuinely sick with fear. I feared again when Matsuya's life was threatened during the final days. Yet again when we watched Medion turn. But between them all, time to decompress, to recover, only for the game to slap me back down with another moment of excitement.
Of course you fucking picked Y'shtola, you simp!
Fear, or sadness. All of Ultima Thule, that finale. To say any of the missteps the story did have make these amazing moments not exist, it's just too much. You don't have to like these moments, but recognize that so many people do. What people probably mostly are down about is the patch quests. Our little adventure was a bit too feeling of a filler arc for most. We got some extremely huge implications through this one, but that's threads we won't see the results of for an expansion or two. After all, as they said at the EU FanFest, we've already seen most of Hydaelyn. We can't stay on this planet forever. we're gonna need to check out the other shards. But anyway, it felt like a filler arc.
See, that's what I meant. That's what I said. We are probably... That might be their whole thing, how they're planning to help new players to start from a different point, other than these expansions, by just making one of the shards like the starting point. If we just go there and start a new story. You know, meet new leaders, deal with their calamities, maybe meet the warriors of fucking marshmallows or whatever. You know, whatever their version of the Warriors of Light is. Yeah, I feel like that is most like the direction they're going to be taking.
We're slow.
Hopefully. I hope they don't do time travel. I hope we don't start in, you know, in the, you know, since we already went to the Asians primal world, like the Genesis. Yeah, I hope we just start on a fancy new shard and we build a water slide between them to travel.
Oh, didn't do much overall, and doesn't lead to Dawn Trail at all. It will probably be the whole reason why we go to Mericidia in 8.0, and connect us to the other shards, where we'll finally lose the
Are you sure we're gonna go to Mericidia in 8.0? I would like to go to Mericidia now. Who knows, maybe we'll go there in Dawn Trail. That would be actually pretty sick, because like we've been hearing and talking about Mericidia for ages, like since Heaven's Sword, because that's when we specifically encountered, you know, Zervan, Sephiroth, and Sophia. I genuinely hope we go to Mericidia.
so she can settle down with Runar. But again, the level of pull these patches had was just lower. At least seems to be.
Chad, do you think Y'shtola is gonna settle down with Runar, or is she actually gonna marry my Warrior of Light? Because I'm the hero and I'm cooler than he is. You know, just an honest question.
The general feeling. It was very middling, but how do you really do much more while still establishing what they needed to? Perhaps you could say that a middling experience is worse than one that is a roller coaster of quality, but I don't inherently agree. There are plenty of games that you would also say are like that I put above so many others. But
alright, little son, you keep your mouth shut. How even dare you use that line on me? I will ban all of you.
It isn't an inherent truth that one level of quality or the other is just outright better. I don't agree that Endwalker didn't have plenty of highs on the level of Heavensward, or even Shadowbringers. So even comparing the full package of story, Endwalker easily takes it for me. Though I mean again, I made my bias known. But look through the whole game and how much we've gone through to get to Endwalker. All the polishing, missteps, and successes. Endwalker's biggest failure is not reaching the same consistent highs as Shadowbringers while not doing enough different of its own. People want change, they want risks, and often they don't even know what they truly want. That's why parroting opinions ends up being so common. They can tell they're looking for something that the game...
KK, little son, Loki Goldknyfe me out.
Keep your mouth shut, that's Koga, not me.
isn't hitting, and there's nothing to do, becomes the mantra I have read far too many times. There's lots to do, more than the darling that is Heavensward. The thing you should be saying is that there's nothing you want to do. Keep criticizing the game. That much is healthy. I myself put a lot of criticisms in this video, and in my disappointment in End...
For fuck's sake, this video is almost over. There's like a minute and a half left. And he's literally making the same point everyone else is saying, just at the very end. He's talked for like over 35 minutes about Heavensward was really bad. It was worse than you remembered. That was the worst expansion. You know what? You think this is bad. Wait till you fucking go back in time and do Heavensward. Then he gushes about the story for about 5-6 minutes. And at the end, the conclusion is, you're not burnt out, you're just bored. Oh, like, this is a good video. I got some insight into fucking Heavensward, but it's like I feel like this video was like unnecessarily long, and like as I said at the beginning of the video, I feel like this person reads a lot of Doug Kafka, because like the way he talks is just very similar to the writing. Let's finish the video.
Endwalker not having a Eureka or a proper relic. But saying things that blatantly aren't true won't get the game to where you want it. If your problem is the 2-minute rotation, say that and explain why. Not just say the identity of your job is gone. Explain why, because as someone who doesn't religiously play your job, that lost its identity. It's the same as it was in Shadowbringers to me. Or in the case of, say, Summoner, kept it...
Your eyes are blinking out of sync. It's because I'm brain dead. It's mainly just how the camera catches me. I'm kind of looking at the screen from a corner, and my my phone keeps kind of recalibrating my own face, so I do look at it.
Its identity as a summoner while being a different job. And that isn't because of the 2-minute meta. Having been thinking about making videos since Heavensward and leveling everything to cap then, and actually doing it starting with Shadowbringers, I don't see that identity lost the same way you do. I'm just a happy little Dragoon main who has been happy with Dragoon since A Realm Reborn.
I mean, people do hate on the 2-minute meta, but you think about it, it's like the 2-minute meta also made sure that every job is viable even more now. We don't have to worry about 30 seconds, 90 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, and 3 minutes. Or 6 minutes in that regard as well.
We've not lost any identity, so explain it in a way I and everyone who doesn't see it will understand, not just pointing at timers. If when I ask why 2-minute rotations are bad and I constantly get it ruined the job identity and nothing else, I struggle to believe you because you can't tell me why. This other guy can, but you're just parroting him when you tell me, oh, he did a talk. You can't explain it to me yourself. If you agreed so much, wouldn't you at least be able to say a little bit more than that? But of all the people I've actually been able to talk to about it and not just read or watch a video on, well, they don't give me anything to go off of. You need to give me something, and then give that to the dev team through official sources. Take the time to make actionable feedback, something someone can understand beyond just a feeling you have, and give that feedback. Because
this entire video can literally be summed up. Wesker telling Lynx, make it make sense and explain. Stop talking like a fucking idiot. Oh, this video did not need to be 47 minutes long.
if you were so upset at the loud minority casuals ruining your game, then maybe it's time to actually give proper feedback instead of blind anger. Even though most of the changes over the years have been due to high-level players.
Or he means Zeppla. Zeppla is also weird with her feedback.
The casuals didn't care. Endwalker isn't the worst. A statement that somehow can be controversial in some circles because of people who just want to be angry or farm clicks. In some cases, both. But some of the stuff I've seen said after this fanfest has just been far too annoying for me not to hate.
I'm gonna put lewd fan art of me as a thumbnail for this reaction video. I need to farm clicks.
Rate this. Endwalker has its problems.
Well, this is essentially the end of the video, but it's like, oh, I have very little to give to this video. It's like, other than like, this video should have not have been almost an hour long. Like, this video should have been way shorter, way shorter. We get it, like, like, Heaven's Sword was bad, and we improved, and we've gone a long way since then, but it's like, it's like, I would have probably clicked off the video if I wasn't watching it. It's fucking sped up 1.5 times. Oh, I clicked a number by accident. But it's like, the fact that you, like, your main conclusion was like the last like 3 minutes out of the 47 is just like very dreading. I do get where this person is coming from. But it's like, I feel like this video could have been way, way better. But yeah, I have very little to give to this video. I did get some insight on Heaven's Sword, but yeah, it's a video. It is a video.